All right, everybody, I'm back live here. Just want to make that clear as to my opinions. Now, I've got my special guest here, Mark Boyer, volunteer fireman, ex-Green Beret, good old guy.
Chucklehead.
Okay, welcome to the show again, Mark.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, as always.
Last time you came on, we talked about some good stuff, but I was doing my homework, looking through my articles, getting prepped, and I came across this article. And it says 33 active shooter statistics for armed citizens. And, well, that title right there piqued my interest. 33 active shooter statistics. Statistics are good because it gets away from all the emotion. It shows you the facts of the way things are. And what I wanted to do was kind of read through this article with Mark here, and we're going to go in and out about it and talk about a couple points and agree on some things and just show you how important it is to do some training. Is there anything you want to start off with?
Yes, this is such an important article. It has statistics that have been proven, documented by government agencies, etc. And I think it would be great if you could get the link to this on your website or your Facebook page for everyone to actually read this. Because once we talk about it, that's great, but people forget things.
Yeah, it's good.
If it goes to your website, they'll have it as a reference. They can print it out. They can study it because there is some very key information in here.
Absolutely, I agree. And ladies and gentlemen, feel free to give us a call, 254-697-6633. Let me start off by reading the first part of the article, then we'll have a list of bullet points, and then we can talk about it. This is by I got this off of the Texas Concealed Handgun Association's website. Okay, they send me an email, so you could probably go find it real quick. But it goes, active shooter events are on the rise, and it has become a very controversial topic with people on both ends of the political spectrum arguing for opposite solutions. The article will review the most relevant data sources on active shooters in order to extrapolate key details on how to prevent, react, and respond to these horrific situations with special emphasis on statistics for the armed citizen. That's us, not law enforcement, not first responders. It's armed citizens. That's us. FBI data indicated a pretty clear upward trend in active shooter events. They also indicate that these events are increasing in numbers of victims killed and wounded. This sounds bleak. However, oftentimes in life there is a silver lining. There has been a noticeable increase in these types of events being successfully stopped by armed citizens, which is cause for celebration. Due to the huge increases in states issuing more permits or adopting constitutional carry, there are more citizens than ever legally able to carry a firearm. This is a great start, but we'll need to do more to help curb these events. Before we go any further, we're going to review some preliminary statistics on active shooter events so we can have a common understanding how they play out. And this is why this article is so good. Active shooter event statistics. Much of the active shooter stats in this section come from from a report, which I don't have here, but I've got the listings of it. Number one, 160 active shooter events occurred in the United States and from 2000, and an average of 11.4 per year. 1,043 casualties occurred during those events. Of those, 486 lost their lives. 2, 70% of the incidents occurred in either a commerce, business, or educational environment. 3, 70% of incidents end in 5 minutes or less. That is big. I mean, they're all big. But I keep telling everybody, you ain't got time to not have one in the chamber. It's going to happen in 3 to 4 seconds when you pull the holster, but the event can just be a few minutes. Yes, sir.
I want to interject something in here, and you might cover it a little bit later in the article, but you just said 5 minutes or less, right?
Correct.
Okay. Think about law enforcement. All right? They do the best they can, and they are doing great stuff, but how long does it take them to get there?
It's going to take them longer than that 90% of the time, if not more.
Exactly, and it's not their fault. It's just reaction time. It's traffic. It's vehicles.
The
it's
call
distance.
is made, dispatch deciphers, sends it out to a badge. Depending on where the badge is, determines on how quick you're going to get there.
So if they can't be there, then an armed citizen or civilian should be there. And if you're not an armed civilian, why not? This is Texas, by God.
Because they'll hurt somebody.
Go ahead, sir. I paused.
All right, number 4. 60% of the incidents ended before police arrived. Mark, see? Only 14% ended without applied force, such as by a negotiated surrender. Number 6. 37% were over in less than 2 minutes. You take about 30 to 45 seconds to a minute, depending on how trained you are, to evaluate. Number 7, only 1.3% had 2 shooters involved. Number 8, and I double asterished this one, 85% of K through 12, kindergarten through 12 incidents, the shooter was a student, former teacher, or related to a person in the facility. This means that the option of hiding has a low probability of success due to the threat knowing where everyone is located. Number 9, in 64 incidents, that's 40%, the shooters committed suicide.
Good.
It's good, but that means if 40% are like that, that means it don't matter what you do, they're going to do what they can before they take themselves out. They know they're going to get killed or stopped or suicide. 54 shooters did so at the scene of the crime. Number 10, at least 107, 66.9%, ended before police arrived and could engage the shooter either because a citizen intervened, the shooter fled, or the shooter committed suicide. 11, the most commonly used weapon was a pistol. That's 60%, followed by rifles, 27%, and shotguns, 10%. And 12, attackers carried multiple weapons in 41% of the attacks. Now, in summary, these are short, violent events that often end with violence being applied to the predator either by their own hand or through bystanders on the scene. In approximately 40% of these scenarios, police weren't even on the scene while the event was going on. And this is not a dig to the police. I'm simply pointing out that these happen so quickly, like Mark just said, that the police will have little time to react and locate the threat. Now that we have some common understanding of these types of events, let's move on to the types of wounds we are likely to see at the active shooter event. But before we do that, Mark, is there anything you want to go over and talk about on this list of 12?
Well, just real briefly, I mean, you covered a lot of good information. This is a very well-written article. But as we have done school training before and church training, those people already know the layout of the property. They know where all the hiding areas are. And later on, I think we're going to touch into it. Instead of getting into a gunfight if you're not properly trained, just put a barrier in between you and the threat. And whether it's a wall or a door, once you do that and you barricade, you separate yourself from the threat, then safeguard, check for everybody, make sure you got accountability, everybody's safe, nobody's wounded. Take your medical training if you have any. You should have any. You should have some.
Maybe we could set something up, Mark.
Maybe we could. Okay. But if you can't, then get out of the area as fast as you can so you are not part of the problem.
Have you noticed that things are getting more calculated, more planned out?
Sure. They've learned from past shootings just like law enforcement has learned from past shootings.
Pause for a second. Now, let's say I go psychotic. You know me. You know what I can do.
It'd be ugly.
It'd be extremely ugly. Because if I'm going to go crazy on work, I know where everything's laid out. I could probably take out 3/4 of the building before anybody even knew it.
This is hypothetical, people.
This is hypothetical. And I'm saying that because if the bad person's getting smart and they're out and they don't care about surviving, if they know your layout, if they know the school, if they know the place of work, if they know where there's a large body count, in the day and age we live, with these statistics, you better get prepared. It could happen anywhere at any time. So if you can't have a weapon at work, we discussed this last time you're on.
Yeah.
Because of the email that was sent, what can I do to protect myself? Thank you, Jeff, very much for that email. And that was basically, what can I use around me that's legal at where I work to protect myself? So think about that. There's people out there with evil intent, and then there's people like us who want to stop that evil intent. Go ahead.
People like us who want to stop that threat, we also take it seriously. We don't just pretend to do it and go pew pew pew. No, we actually do our training, because if you are an armed citizen, a civilian, you need to train. You have a responsibility to train, not only with the weapon but also medical training, so you can deal with other situations after the shooting's done. But we're going to touch into that a little bit later, aren't we?
We are. I want to look at my asterisks here, though. One of the asterisks was it was over in less than 2 minutes.
And for Pete's sake, a lot of people out there who have guns and concealed weapon permits, half of them can't even draw the weapon properly and safely within 2 minutes.
You know, it's sad to say, but you're right. I see it all the time.
Who was the chucklehead who just shot himself in Killeen trying to draw his weapon out of the holster?
I'm not sure of that one, but what the problem is, people have the favorable attitude about weapons, and they have the favorable attitude about wanting to carry a weapon, but that's not all it takes. It takes the third aspect, and that's application of that and learning your skills. And even further, not just practicing, but practicing correctly.
You could have a Corvette, but you may not have a license to drive it.
Yeah, or you might not know how to shift gears. I mean, you got the equipment, but you don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
The one I double asterisk, like I talked about, was people are like former students, former teachers, and they know the areas, like I just discussed with Mark about that. And then,
speaking of that, when we did that school training recently, I can't mention the school, but we spent a lot of time on the hallway. And in here it states that most of the shootings were either in the hallway or the classroom.
that's right.
And the hallway is a channel. It's a long access. And so all you have to do is point the weapon and you shoot down the hall. You're going to hit somebody and all the chaos. So the hallway needs to be a primary plan or reactionary plan because it's going to lead right into your classroom. So keep the target out there, not inside.
All right, let's for time's sake. We got good time.
Good.
Let's see your active shooter event casualty statistics. This is one area where most people have a very poor understanding of what actually happens and what kind of medical interventions are actually effective. So much of this data comes from autopsy data from active shooter victims. Now, number one here, 52% of casualties in kindergarten through 12 were, like you're saying, Mark, in hallways or classrooms. In classrooms, they're huddled together. In hallways, there's nowhere to run. Okay, and you can just get sprayed with bullets. Number two, victims had an average of 2.7 gunshots. How do you get the 0.7 in there? It must have been a ricochet. 58% of victims had gunshots to the head and chest, and only 20% had extremity wounds. The probable site of fatal wounding was the head or chest in 77% of the cases. Only 7% of the victims had potentially survivable wounds. The most common site of potentially survivability injury was the chest, 89%. No head injury was potentially survivable. And what do you think on that, Mark? Due to the wars, okay, let me read this. Due to the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, we have seen huge advances in first aid and tactical casualty care. The biggest advances in the use of, turning the page, tourniquet and control massive hemorrhage, which is one of the key causes of preventable death on the battlefield. Unfortunately, this is not the case in active shooter events. And I totally get this. You see soldiers and Marines wear body armor which protects their vital organs from bullets and blast fragmentation. This leaves the arms and legs as the primary exposed targets, and these appendages can be well controlled with a tourniquet. But since we're not wearing armor in schools and work, which might be a good idea, why don't you talk about that, Mark?
Thank you. This is very important to me because I always believe that saving lives is better than taking lives. And for the longest time, especially with all my military history, we've been told about tourniquets. And like they're saying in the article, as soldiers, we carry body armor. We wear body armor 24/7 practically. And we throw on a tourniquet. We keep getting in the fight. It's just tourniquet, field pressure dressings. And not enough is spoken about Asherman seals, chest wounds, and head trauma. Head trauma, well, pretty much in this, it's instantaneous and you're done. But the chest cavity, I don't talk enough about it. There's a lot of things that we can do about that. You can go on Amazon.com, people, and get combat gauze, which is just basically like gauze that you can stuff into a wound and it seals the wound. It coagulates the blood. It just seals it. Doesn't cause any damage like Celox does. Celox used to burn and cauterize the wound, but it caused more damage and it was more difficult for the doctors to treat afterwards. But there's a lot of things that can be done about that. They're talking about a seal in this article. A seal is basically a dressing that covers the wound. If you have a sucking chest wound, perhaps, or a tension pneumothorax, then
Can you explain those two real quick? Chest wound?
A sucking chest wound is where you have a penetrating puncture. A bullet goes through your lungs, and now the air inside your lungs, as your muscles are flexing in and out, you're sucking air through the wound instead of through the airway. And so now you're getting air into the chest cavity or the lung cavity. It's compressing the lungs, and so we need to seal that wound so you can start breathing normally, and then we have to vent the air that's inside that cavity, and you can do that with a needle valve. But from my experience, if you use the Asherman seal, which is commonly found on Amazon.com and paramedic kits, very seldom do they actually stick to the wound and create a good seal. And if you have one, practice with it. But in my experience on the SF teams, Special Forces teams, we went to moleskin, and we would cut a trim around the side so we would have a clean valve on one side, so it would prevent air from going in, but also as a flutter valve, the air inside could escape once the lungs are starting to expand normally again. And moleskin sticks to anything.
Yeah, I know, right?
But the Asherman seals, they're fairly expensive, and they don't stick to a bloody chest. But keeping that in mind, you also have to look for an exit wound. Not only the penetrating wound, but the exit wound also. So definitely sweep the backside of the body. There's a lot of other things, but it all goes back to medical training, people.
And it says in this article too, everything you say is in here, everything they say, you say, I mean, it goes back and forth. I don't advocate buying a medical kit and keeping it around as some sort of good luck charm, hoping to ward off emergencies. Get some competent training past basic first aid.
Speaking of this, and I'll try to keep it brief, but I've worked for several companies overseas. I've worked with several government organizations, and they always have the coolest first aid kits out there, the top of the line stuff. And you can get them on Amazon. You can get the Cloak and Dagger super cool assassin black ninja first aid kit. It's crazy. All the crazy stuff you can get online. Mm-hmm. The key thing is you got to know what's in it, and you got to train with it. Somebody says, "Oh, I've got this really cool first aid kit." My first question is, well, do you train with it? If not, shut up.
You know what I noticed too? All this stuff comes packaged. Can you get the package open? I mean, I'm serious. You look at some things, you try to open up a package, and like, have a knife. Have a knife with you.
One of my Special Forces medics, he taught me to put a pull tab on everything. Pre-open it, then take your surgical tape, make a little pull tab, so in the haste of everything going on, you don't have time to think of how to rip the stuff open. You don't want to put it in your mouth like you see on TV and rip it open with your teeth. If you can prevent that, do that, because you got all kinds of blood pathogens out there and body fluids and things. Simple pull tab. Prep your equipment, know your equipment. The same with your weapon.
Would you agree on this statement? I know you're going to agree, but you've got, there's so many things in life that we should do, can do, but it doesn't pertain to the survival of you or others or the protection of property. So many other things. So you can't be perfect in everything. You can't be great in everything. But there are some things, like if you're going to think about carrying a gun, you have to be good. You have to know what you're doing. And if you're going to do that, you need to know at least the basics, maybe a little bit advanced on the basics, especially where we are. But then what do you have with you? If you're going to have something with you, I know I'm lacking this because the way I work, where I work, I'm limited as to what I can do. So I got to figure things out.
Matt, you're reminding me that we got a lot of Johnny wannabe Rambos out there that'll get all the latest cool guy get. The latest guns, the coolest hot shot ammo, the coolest medical kits in the world, the coolest tech gear. The thing is, they want to look good. They want to be cool. But they don't train with it. Because when they show it to you, it's brand new. It's got the Cosmoline still on the gun. And
I compliment them for getting to that mode. But there's more to it, man.
There's so much more to it. If you're doing all that, you want to save lives, right? Or you want to look cool doing it.
I use this analogy in my class.
Be real, people.
If you're baking a cake and you overcook it, what do? You throw it out and do it again. If you send a person to the moon, your calculations have to be spot on. If you're carrying a gun and you shoot the weapon, it better hit the target, okay? Because if it doesn't, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. There's no room for error.
And Matt, as much as we train already, there's always room for more.
Absolutely.
We never stop training.
As good as we are, I know I'm not bragging. I'm just saying we train and I know what I can do. But even that, mistakes are made. It's just you're human and things are going to happen. So when you're shooting at a piece of paper at the range and nobody's trying to hurt you under a controlled environment, everything's protected, you're in a steel cubicle shooting at a piece of paper that doesn't attack you and you can hit it, fine. But when your adrenaline's pumping and you got to do it on the fly and you got to do a combat reload and you got to analyze who's past the target, who's before the target, who's with the target, can you shoot accurately, can you do surgical shooting? That's the wrong time to figure out a new skill, right?
People are dying as you're trying to figure all that stuff out. You need to instantaneously remove the threat, people.
And the only reason I'm hyping this up is because we do live in this age now where this is necessary. I'm looking at this graph right here.
Oh yeah, we got to get back to the article.
Let me look at this graph here. It's showing
Good information.
of the 283 total active shooter events in this 18-year period, armed citizens were present at 33 of them. So it's saying here, am I reading this right? 11.7% armed citizens were present, 88.3% armed citizens not present. So the more people we have on site who are armed and who are trained, we'll have more chance of stopping people from doing bad things. But that wasn't really the chart I wanted to see here. I know it's here it is. The success of armed citizens in stopping active shooters and or reducing the loss of life. Of the 33 incidents in which armed citizens was present, the armed citizen was successful in stopping the active shooter 75.8% of the time and successful in reducing the lives lost an additional 18.2% of the time. So if we got the circle here, we have 18.2% that lives were saved. We've got 75.8% they were stopped, and only in 6.1% was it not helpful based on this chart. So what does that tell you? Be armed, be part of the solution, not part of the problem, but get yourself trained. And you come to me and I'll train you. Get your teams together. I've got my team and we practice. Get a team of people that you know. Get a group of 5 or 6 people. Coordinate with me, and I'll teach you. We'll show you how to do this.
Matt, I got to interject something on that. In all the statistics in this article, and this covered a few years that they did all these statistics, it states in bold letters that they found that no cases where an armed citizen mistakenly shot the wrong person or missed the attacker and hit a bystander. To me, I was blown away. I was surprised by that because you and I, we constantly train and we emphasize to others that you have to be accountable for every bullet that leaves your chamber.
I'm reading in between the lines there. That's an excellent line, but I'm reading in between the lines.
Okay.
You know, and I know, it takes a certain type of person to go face the threat. And I think the majority of that mindset does the training. And I think that's why that sentence comes into play. The person who's willing to engage the threat and who's capable and has the weapon, most likely, I can't put a guarantee on it, but most likely has done some training for that sentence to be true, where nobody else has been hurt because they did the training, they understood the necessity of being accurate and surgical with the shots. Concur? Not concur?
I totally concur. And while we're thinking about training, and we're doing a lot of talking about training people, do you know of a good range somewhere in the area that people could actually come to and do some training?
Let me see. I know there's a great one. It's Aaron's Gun Shop. Okay. Self-pat on the back there. Let me go back to this article unless you got something here. Oh, wait. This is what we were talking about, too. It seems clear from the statistics listed above that the traditional run, hide, fight is probably not the best advice. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been hearing me say for months now that they train run, hide, fight. And I say, screw that. If I've got the capability, I'm going to the threat and taking that MFer down, okay? I'm not going to run and leave my coworkers or family or something like that defend for themselves when I can do something. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do it. That's probably not the best advice. So I've been teaching that. I'm not going to say it's wrong, but I think it misses out on the real world complications of these scenarios. We can see from the stats above that many of these scenarios are in the business or schools, and the attackers are often employees of these facilities, and they will be familiar with the layout, like we said earlier in the article. Go ahead.
Matt, I got something very important. I know we're running short on time.
We're good.
But a follow-up on this article. The guy was saying, okay, if you are involved in an active shooter and you're that good, trained, armed citizen out there, once the gunfight is over, be sure that you reholster your firearm as soon as you can and safely do so. preferably before the police arrive. And he's being honest here, saying that anyone holding a gun is going to be in serious danger once the police arrive.
Amen.
Now, there was a case where a former veteran, I can't remember the state, but there was a mall shooting. He responded, he put down the target, he still had the gun in his hand, and the mall cop came around, saw him, he had a gun in his hand, and the mall cop killed him. And it was just because the guy did the right thing, but he didn't reholster his weapon fast enough.
You know, not only is good training with a handgun important, but discernment is good. You got to be able to read body language and read a situation and see if you're proficient enough with the firearm. If you're proficient enough, you can wait to the last possible second before you pull that trigger. A person who's not proficient in training is just going to start spraying bullets. You can't do that.
And also, that goes in that if you're an armed citizen, or civilian, excuse me, and you actually see a situation, be sure that you positively identify the threat. That could be another armed citizen trying to put down the shooter.
That's right.
So don't shoot the first guy with a gun.
Now, you've seen what we've done in training. We've got the bad guys with children next to them,
Mm-hmm.
people in front of the bad guy with the children, and then pedestrians in the back, and you're walking, and the situation happens, and the caller of the shots will call something that you're not prepared for, and you got to analyze, decipher, figure out, draw the weapon, and move your body, get to a position where you can take the shot that doesn't shoot somebody in foreground, middle ground, or background.
Also, a perfect example of positively identifying the threat. We were doing some church training, and as the guy is approaching and he looks very suspicious and very aggressive, he reaches inside of his jacket and he starts to pull out something. And one of our churchgoers who was on the crisis response team, or the safety team, he said, well, I would engage him. I'd shoot him. And I would say, well, why? The guy reaches in his thing, he comes out and he's got a Bible in his hand. So you have to look at the hands, people. The hands kill. If the guy's got a gun in his hand, well, like your guy said, if he's pointing a gun at you, you shoot him and you kill him. You eliminate the threat, excuse me.
And even then, I mean, he's saying that, the guy said that in that article, and it was, that was half incorrect the way it was said. You're not going to just, if somebody points a gun at you, let me take that back. What I'm trying to get at is you got to evaluate the situation. You can't
Exactly.
you can't just be pulling the trigger for any reason. You got to evaluate on every
Look
situation.
at the hands.
Okay. If you're carrying a weapon and you make the decision to intervene, then you get a high five. But realize that this should not be a fair fight. If you know your target is the shooter and he is actively hunting people, then you will be fine to use lethal force to stop the threat. This isn't a fair fight. If you engage the threat without exposing yourself, then common sense says to do so. I would also recommend that you look for some quality legal training. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why I say you're crazy if you don't subscribe to my channel. I've got super attorney Rick Dodd and attorney extraordinaire Benton Ross Watson on tons of videos going over all the penal codes, scenarios, 30 minutes. You can listen to it, repeat it, play it.
It's
and
free
it's
legal
free
advice.
from very good attorneys. And it says here that you can't do in your state, what type of weapon you can legally carry. And Mark made a comment to that. What else, buddy? We got about a minute.
Okay, final thought. Folks, I don't know if you know it, but I volunteered to be part of the Cameron Volunteer Fire Department, and I'm having a ball. It's a great time. And I don't know if you've noticed or not, but it's pretty hot and dry outside, even at nighttime. So if you like your house, if you like your property, if you like your neighbors, and even if you don't like your neighbors, and if you're interested in serving your community, and if you like working with some really awesome, cool, and professional hard chargers, give us a call at the fire station or call Fire Chief Henry Hoslick at 254-697-4702 or 697-1491. And I just found out, folks, that if you want to call that number and if you don't have fire or smoke alarms, that the fire department will come out and install them for free at your house. All you have to do for your free smoke detector and installation, which is pretty cool, is, again, call the fire station or Fire Chief Henry Hoslick at area code 254-697-4702, and 697-1491. And remember, those smoke alarms and detectors only work if the batteries are in them.
That's right.
So check your smoke detectors. And that's all I got. Thank you very much for the time.
It's awesome that you came on. I think it was a great article we went over and reviewed. The author did a great job. So, ladies and gentlemen, this will be on YouTube probably Tuesday, and you can check it out and share it with as many people as you can, okay? Kincaid, let's take a real quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have the delicious Janae Goodman talking about something even better than dips and salsa. That's Dips and Salsa Part 2. So let's see you on the other side.
The delicious Janae Goodman.